All right, so let's get right into this really incredible story. It's about a father named Rishi, his daughter Sumita, and this huge shift in their relationship that teaches us something really powerful about learning, about teaching, and who actually gets to be the teacher.
So, not that long ago, Rishi had this evening call that was like a cherished ritual for him. He'd say, "Come, we will figure this out together." And he and Sumita would sit down and tackle her schoolwork. It was this bonding experience he just loved. But then, something changed. All of a sudden, she just stopped coming. So the big question is, why? What happened?
For Rishi, teaching was a genuine passion. He really looked forward to these sessions with his daughter, maybe just as much as she did. But right as Sumita started grade 6, this quiet distance started to creep in between them. Their after-work chats went from homework problems to just talking about movies and weekend plans, and she kept insisting she could handle her work on her own.
So Rishi's feeling this growing gap, right? And he finally just asks her straight up if he'd done something to upset her. Sumita's answer was pretty simple and maybe a little guarded. She just said, "I want to be competent by myself. That's all." And sure, that's an answer, but for Rishi, it just didn't feel like the whole story.
He wasn't satisfied with that, so Rishi decides he needs to get another perspective. The upcoming parent-teacher meeting seemed like, the perfect chance to get some real clarity on what was going on with his daughter. He just had to understand this change.
And this is where he gets a huge clue. The teacher tells him about this incident from a few months back. Apparently, Sumita had solved this really tough science problem that nobody else in the class could get. So the teacher, trying to praise her, asks her to come up and explain it on the board. But she got stuck halfway through. It was totally humiliating for her. And get this, her grades started slipping right after that happened.
Okay, so now Rishi has a piece of the puzzle, but it doesn't quite fit, He gets that she was humiliated for sure, but how does that connect to her pulling away from him? He's left just wondering, why were they growing so distant over this one thing?
After that meeting, Rishi was just quiet, lost in his thoughts. And of course, his silence didn't go unnoticed by Sumita. She asked him what the teacher said, and that question, well, it created the opening that Rishi really needed. It was time to have a real, honest-to-goodness conversation.
And this is the moment where everything just clicks into place. Sumita finally tells him. She explains that even though she loves him and their time together, she would often just nod along to his explanations without really getting it. Why? Because she didn't want to look incapable in his eyes. And then she gives him this incredibly brave piece of feedback. "The way you teach me does not help me." For Rishi, who took so much pride in being a good teacher, that just hit him like a ton of bricks.
So here's the absolute core of the issue. It was this fundamental mismatch. Rishi's whole approach was conceptual. It was abstract. He loved explaining the why. But Sumita, well, she's a next-generation kid. She thrives on application. She needed to see the how in a really practical, hands-on way.
And she gives him a brilliant example of what she means. She talks about this online teacher who explained a pricing problem by having the students digitally paint a house. They had a budget, they had to pick out their paints, and they could literally see their color choices pop up on the walls. She wasn't just learning a concept, she was applying it to create something. That's what made sense to her.
This really honest and probably pretty painful feedback from his own daughter suddenly sparks a memory for Rishi. It takes him way back to this powerful piece of advice he got from one of his own professors a long, long time ago.
And this bit of wisdom just completely reframes the whole situation. His professor had warned him that life is going to present these learning moments and that ego is the enemy of growth. The lesson was so simple but so profound. When you are ready to learn, the teacher will appear.
And in that exact moment, Rishi has his breakthrough. He realizes, wait a minute, this isn't about him failing as a father or a teacher. This is a learning moment for him. He needed to let go of his eagerness to teach and instead embrace his own readiness to learn.
It was a total role reversal. Rishi accepted the lesson, and when he did, he saw it so clearly. His teacher, the one who had just appeared when he was ready, was his very own daughter.
Now, this story wraps up beautifully with a hug between the father and daughter, but it leaves all of us with a really powerful question to think about. It kind of makes you look at your own relationships, with your kids, your coworkers, your friends, and just ask yourself, who in my life might be the teacher I never expected?